Welcome to my channel Starlight Sci-Fi Stories. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. The stars above Arcturus IX burned cold and distant, but for Ambassador Jaren Hale, they felt like the eyes of 1,000 civilizations judging him. He stood alone on the observation deck of the human diplomatic vessel Endeavor, staring out at the glittering expanse of the Zorian Empire. This mission had been his life's work, the first official contact with a species rumored to be as ancient as the galaxy itself. Every step of his journey had been calculated, studied, and rehearsed. And yet, standing at the edge of their capital, he felt the strange pull of uncertainty tightening around his chest. "Ambassador," a voice came from behind him. It was Lieutenant Mara Chen, his security attaché. She always seemed to arrive at the moment tension threatened to choke him. "We'll be docked in 10 minutes. The Zorian officials will expect immediate presentation." "I know," Jaren replied, though his mind was elsewhere. "Do you ever get the feeling," he began quietly, "that we're walking into a story we're not meant to understand?" Mara frowned. "Only every time we meet an alien empire older than our own history. Focus, Ambassador. One mistake, one misstep, and we die before even getting to speak." He turned to her, giving her a tight smile. "Yes, I'll remember that." But deep down, he feared it might not be enough. The docking clamps hissed and locked. The Endeavor shuddered as it settled against the Zorian orbital platform. Jaren's pulse quickened. Every training drill, every simulation of interstellar protocol had led to this moment. He had learned their language, their history, even their forms of politeness down to the exact degree of bowing for each rank. And yet, the feeling of walking blindly into a room of creatures who could crush him with a thought was more real than any simulation. The transport corridor was silent as they moved toward the main chamber. Jaren's heart beat in time with the faint hum of the ship's artificial gravity. Ahead, the doors to the Zorian throne hall opened with a reverent hiss. The chamber was vast, impossibly large, with ceilings that seemed to stretch into infinity. Crystal pillars reflected the soft bioluminescent light that bathed the room in shades of violet and silver. At the far end, the throne sat elevated on a platform, carved from a single piece of blackened starstone that seemed to drink in the light around it. And there, seated with regal composure, was the Zorian sovereign, tall, luminous, her skin glinting like dark metal in the soft light, eyes glowing faintly with an inner fire. "Ambassador Jaren Hale," her voice echoed through the chamber, resonant and commanding. "You stand before the Zorian sovereign as the first representative of your species. Speak your purpose." Jaren swallowed hard. "Your Excellency," he said carefully, "I come on behalf of humanity to negotiate a trade accord. Our people seek energy resources to secure our planet's future. We come in peace, with respect for your sovereignty and history." The sovereign's eyes narrowed, but only slightly. She gestured, and the chamber doors slid open further, revealing a group of Zorian advisors. They moved with unnatural grace, their movements synchronized as if choreographed. One stepped forward, bowing. "Sovereign," it said, voice like wind over crystal. "The human presents words of peace, but intentions are unreadable. Shall we allow them further access?" The sovereign's gaze returned to Jaren. "They will enter the court. But know this, deception is invisible only to the foolish. Every word, every thought, every half-hidden motive is transparent here." Jaren's stomach tightened. He nodded. "I understand." They moved through the court, every step measured and precise. Jaren noticed the strange elegance of the Zorians. Every surface, every decoration seemed both functional and ornamental, as though the entire world had been designed to be a reflection of its creator's perfection. And yet, beneath the beauty, he sensed danger. The slightest misstep could be fatal. At the throne, he was commanded to kneel. "Ambassador," the sovereign said, "your species values ceremony. You have observed our customs. You will speak now of the treaty, of your intentions, and of your respect for our people." He cleared his throat. "Your Excellency, humanity recognizes the greatness of the Zorian Empire. Our scientists have studied your cities, your technologies, your histories. We come seeking trade, sharing, and the chance to learn from your people." There was a pause. Then, with a suddenness that made his heart jump, the sovereign leaned forward slightly. "And yet," she said, voice low and dangerous, "I sense more than respect. There is curiosity, admiration, desire." Jaren froze. The words were not what he had intended to convey, at least, not in a way that mattered here. And yet, the sovereign's translator interface, an organic implant that interfaced directly with neural pathways, had interpreted his thoughts. Not just his words. His surface intentions, yes, but also the fleeting admiration he had tried to suppress. I only meant to express respect for your civilization," he stammered. "Respect," she echoed, tilting her head. "Or recognition." Recognition. The word slashed through him like a blade. In this culture, spoken truth was not just verbal, it was existential. The sovereign's eyes bored into him. "You see me, Ambassador Hale, not as a ruler, not as a symbol, you see me." He could not deny it. In that moment, he had recognized her magnificence, not her crown, not her authority, but the being beneath it. And now, because of that recognition, he was in a position he had never trained for. "You have spoken thoughts that can bind you," she continued, rising from her throne. Her height was imposing, her presence like a tide of gravity. The recognition of a Zorian sovereign carries consequences. Jaren's pulse raced. He had prepared for diplomatic failure, for insult, for misunderstanding. But this was uncharted territory. I do not intend offense," he said. "I did not mean." The sovereign's eyes flicked to the court advisors, then back to him. "Intent does not matter where truth is known. You have glimpsed beyond the surface. You have recognized, whether by accident or design. And now a choice is offered." "A choice?" Jaren asked, swallowing dryly. "Accept the bond, Ambassador," she said, her voice as cold as ice yet strangely melodic. "Or leave this chamber and never return to the Zorian Empire." Jaren's stomach lurched. Leave. That would doom his mission, ruin humanity's chance at energy security, perhaps ignite tensions between two species. Accept. He didn't even know what it meant. A bond with a Zorian sovereign. What did that entail? Before he could answer, she descended from the throne platform, each step deliberate, each movement precise. The advisors stepped back, forming a silent perimeter around him. "You have until the rise of the first twin moons to decide," she said. "Dawn comes in 4 hours." Jaren was escorted to a private chamber, a room of astonishing beauty yet unmistakably a cell. Bioluminescent gardens glowed beneath a translucent floor, and delicate streams of water curved through the room like liquid crystal. Yet every exit was sealed. Guards stationed themselves with silent vigilance. Alone, he tried to think. Every diplomatic manual, every guide, every moment of his life's preparation had not accounted for a choice like this. He looked at the small table in the center of the room. A single object rested there, a pendant, pulsing softly with inner light. A heartstone, the chamber's attendant had called it. The attendant had explained, "It beats in time with the sovereign's heartbeat. It is offered to those who recognize her truth. Once touched, the bond can begin." Jaren's fingers hovered above the stone. 30 minutes passed. 1 hour. Each moment stretched into eternity. Outside, the twin moons crept across the sky, their light a pale echo of the sovereign's power. He remembered Earth. He remembered the lives dependent on the success of this mission. Every choice had consequences. If he accepted, he might bind humanity's future to this alien empire. But he might also secure their survival. If he refused, he risked personal failure, but perhaps survival for himself. A soft knock came at the door. The chamber shimmered, and the sovereign entered, dressed now in flowing robes that emphasized her stature, yet revealed her as human-like in essence, not just alien grandeur. "You hold the Heartstone," she said. "Do you understand the weight of what you consider?" Jaren nodded, voice barely audible. "I do, And yet, he took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the stone almost in time with his own heartbeat. I will not choose blindly. I will learn, I will understand, and then I will decide. The sovereign studied him, a hint of surprise flickering across her features. You wish to know me beyond what is visible. You wish to court wisdom before declaring intent. I do, he said firmly. For a moment the chamber was silent except for the Heartstone's pulse. Then the sovereign smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly. Then you shall have your time, ambassador. But know this, the hours before dawn are fleeting, and in them truth cannot hide. Jaren sat back, heart pounding. The first part of the test had begun, not of diplomacy, not of courage, but of understanding an empire older than time itself. And as the moons rose higher, casting silver light through the crystal chamber, he realized that survival would demand more than knowledge. It would demand the courage to recognize, to choose, and perhaps to bind himself in ways no human had ever imagined. Outside the chamber, the empire continued its quiet hum of life, oblivious to the human ambassador's turmoil. But inside, Jaren Hale had stepped onto a path from which there would be no retreat. He picked up the Heartstone again, feeling the warmth of possibility, danger, and, perhaps, the faint stirrings of connection. And above all, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity had just entered a game played across millennia, and the first move rested in his hands. The chamber was silent, save for the slow, steady pulse of the Heartstone in Jaren Hale's hand. The first rays of the twin moons streaked across the crystal floor, washing the room in pale light. Time had a different weight here. Every second felt like an eternity, every thought amplified by the sovereign's awareness. He had resolved to understand before he committed, but understanding was proving more difficult than any simulation, more dangerous than any negotiation. The Zorian sovereign, Talira, had not returned after her initial visit, yet her presence lingered like a tangible force. Every flicker of light, every ripple in the room seemed to carry her intent. Jaren's thoughts were interrupted by the quiet sound of the chamber doors shimmering. He spun, expecting guards, but it was Mara Chen, his security attaché. Her face was a mask of urgency, her eyes sharp. "Ambassador," she said softly, though her voice carried steel. "They allowed me in. Why are you still here? You were supposed to decide hours ago." "I am deciding," he said, though even he knew it sounded like a weak excuse. "But not in the way anyone expects." She frowned. "Explain." He held the Heartstone out toward her. "This is not just a symbol. It is her trust, her offer of connection, of a bond that binds not just me, but humanity and her empire. I will not choose blindly. I must know her fully before I make this decision." Mara's eyes widened. "You're gambling with humanity's future for what? Curiosity." "Not curiosity," Jaren said firmly. "Recognition, understanding, and maybe the chance to prove what humanity can be." She shook her head. "You're impossible, but I see your point. I'll wait outside, but if anything goes wrong, ambassador." "I know," he said, giving her a brief nod. Alone again, Jaren let himself breathe. He felt the pulse of the Heartstone against his palm and realized how alive it seemed. Not just a relic or a device, something far older and more aware than anything humans had ever made. He closed his eyes and concentrated, imagining the sovereign not as an alien ruler, but as a being with thoughts, fears, and desires. Hours passed in silence. The first sun of the twin star system began to rise, casting gold and violet light across the chamber. The Heartstone's pulse quickened, and Jaren sensed her approach before he saw her. Talira entered silently, her robes catching the light, eyes bright with the intensity that had first drawn him in. "You meditate on the weight of a choice," she said softly, "and yet you hesitate at the final step. Why?" Jaren held up the Heartstone. "Because I have seen the consequences of hasty decisions. One misstep, one misunderstanding, it could destroy the trust between our peoples. I will not risk that lightly." Her eyes narrowed and he felt the weight of her judgment. And yet you hesitate with your own life at stake. You could leave, walk away, and live. Why do you not? Because leaving would betray what I feel, he said. Recognition is not something you can ignore. I see you, not just your power, but you, and I will not abandon that understanding. Talira studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she stepped closer. Very well, she said. If you wish to truly understand, you will undergo the trial of the twin moons. It is ancient and it tests more than words. It tests intent, courage, and truth of heart. Jaren swallowed. A trial. Yes, she said, her voice firm. Only through the trial can one prove the readiness for a binding. You will walk through the garden of mirrors, where thought, emotion, and intent are made real. Only if you survive and are not found wanting can the bond be formed. He nodded. He had studied Zorian customs, but trials of this magnitude were rarely recorded or explained. This was uncharted territory, but it was the only way forward. Talira led him to a side chamber, a doorway of black metal glowing faintly with alien runes. She gestured, and he stepped inside. The walls shifted, the floor dissolved beneath him, and he found himself in the garden of mirrors. It was a place of impossible geometry, where reflections moved independently, and the stars above were mirrored in infinite repetition. Each step echoed in ways that seemed impossible, and then the mirrors began to shimmer, revealing images, memories, fears, truths of his own mind. First he saw Earth, its cities burning with war, its forests dying under human hands, faces of people he had never met suffering because of human greed or ignorance. He froze. "I have done nothing," he whispered, though the mirrors seemed to echo accusingly. "Intent is not innocence," a voice said. Jaren turned, and there she was, Talira, appearing in multiple reflections, her gaze piercing. "The garden shows what you are willing to face, not what you hope to hide. To bind, you must accept yourself fully." Jaren's heart pounded. He stepped forward, determined. He would not turn back. He had come this far for humanity, for trust, for understanding, and if he failed, he would do so knowing he had faced truth, not illusion. The mirrors shifted again, showing another vision, this time of Talira. He saw her not as the commanding sovereign, but as a being alone in a vast empire. She had waited centuries, observing generations pass, seeking someone who could see her, not her title, not her power, but her soul. And he realized something. The fear he felt was mirrored in her own, just in a different form. She too had something to risk. "You see me," she said from the shadows, her voice echoing. "Do you understand what that means?" "I do," Jaren said, voice steady. "Recognition is not flattery, it is truth, and I recognize you fully." The mirrors rippled and the images dissolved. Jaren felt the floor shift again. When he opened his eyes, he was back in the chamber, holding the Heartstone. Talira stood before him, regal and imposing, but also closer, human in essence, not just sovereign. "You have passed the trial," she said, and for the first time there was warmth in her voice. "You understand the gravity of what you choose, and yet choice remains yours. Speak your intent." Jaren took a deep breath. Every thought, every moment of preparation, every lesson from humanity's triumphs and failures crystallized into one clear decision. He held the Heartstone out to her. "I choose the bond," he said. "Not because it is safe, not because it is expected, but because I see you. And I believe that together we can honor what humanity and your people can become. I accept the responsibility, the weight, the future, and I bind myself to you, Sovereign Talira, not as a subject, but as a partner." Talira's eyes softened and she stepped forward, taking the Heartstone in her own hand. The pulse of the gem intensified, resonating between them. She reached out and their fingers met over the glowing sphere. Energy surged, not violent, not destructive, but alive, alive with the power of intent and trust. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Jaren felt warmth spread through his chest, through every nerve. He had not only survived the trial, he had chosen fully, with knowledge, courage, and truth. "You honor me," Talira said softly, And in doing so, you honor your people. The bond is formed. Outside, the Zorian court waited. Word would spread quickly, but for Jaren, the chamber had become a sanctuary of understanding. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, fear and awe gave way to a quiet certainty. Mara Chen entered then, eyes wide at the sight. "Ambassador, you." "I made the choice," Jaren said simply, holding the Heartstone. "We have a future to protect, not just for us but for both our worlds." Talira inclined her head slightly. "You will have time to learn each other fully. Courtship among my people is not fleeting. It is a constant journey of challenge, understanding, and shared responsibility. But now it begins in earnest." Jaren nodded. He felt the weight of the promise, the power of the bond, and for the first time he did not fear the unknown. Instead, he felt a sense of purpose, of possibility. Humanity had entered a new era, not through conquest or coercion, but through courage, intellect, and the recognition of truth. The twin moons rose fully, casting light on the crystal city beyond. Jaren and Talira stood together on the observation balcony, the Heartstone glowing softly between them. Below, diplomats scrambled to adjust protocols, trade negotiations resumed, and the galaxy watched unknowingly as the first human-Zorian bond was forged. And in that moment, Jaren Hale understood the meaning of his life's work, that humanity could rise to greatness not only through technology or weapons, but through courage, empathy, and the willingness to recognize the magnificence of others, alien or otherwise. He smiled at Talira. "I look forward to learning from you and challenging you." She returned the smile, a spark of warmth in eyes that had seen centuries. "And I from you, Ambassador. Together we will shape the future." The Heartstone pulsed steadily, a heartbeat shared across species, across worlds, across the unknown. And for the first time, Jaren Hale believed in the limitless potential of humanity. The galaxy would remember this day, though few would understand it fully. For Jaren and Talira, it was not just history, it was the beginning of a partnership, a bond forged in trust, courage, and recognition, and it would last longer than either could imagine. The twin suns rose, the crystal city shimmered, and the ambassador finally understood the meaning of being human and the power of being seen.